Great, thank you, and thanks to Arthur and indeed Andy for setting this slot up. So yes, we are here today to talk to you about a new offer which we hope will allow us to work together with members of the ICG. So I'm hoping that the second screen is appearing in front of you. It's taking its time on my end. But the objective of this morning session is really to explore ways in which we can work together. Prior to that, it's probably worth giving a quick overview, even if that is just a refresher for some of you, of who we are, of course, and what TGI is, which is our main consumer data source. Really just as a way to set the scene. Josie and I work for a unit within Kantar Media, which is called TGI Insights and Integration. This is a fairly small part of the overall business, but essentially it's the brand owner consulting team within TGI. Now, Kantar Media, effectively, I'm using a little bit of license here, but is the rebrand of BMRB, British Market Research Bureau. For some of you who may recall TGI from days gone by, that's maybe the reference point. When Kantar is ultimately part of WPP, it's the sort of insight and innovation arm. And when WPP purchased TNS maybe 3 or 4 years ago, that's when the BMRB branding disappeared. So we sit alongside other Kantar companies like Millward Brown, TNS, what was RI, the Futures Company, so what was the Henley Centre, people like that. But as I say, our unit is a brand owner consulting team. And it's probably just worth stressing that brand owner focus that we have with a nod to TGI's roots in media and indeed our historical offer. And apologies if I am, to coin a horrible phrase, teaching grannies to suck eggs, because I'm sure quite a few of you may be familiar with this, but it's worth just going over. TGI enjoys currency status in the media industry, so advertising is really bought and sold on the basis of what TGI data tells planners and indeed big media owners. And most of these buy directly into TGI on a continuous basis. And historically, this direct route to TGI access required expensive annual subscriptions. The model for our unit, which has been around for not quite a decade or so, is far more flexible in its approach, in its delivery, and indeed in its cost structure. And importantly, this is aimed at the end client rather than anyone in media. So this flexibility, if you like, combined with the success that we've had working in conjunction with various consultants over the years is the real reason why we'd like to talk to the ICG today. That and the fact that I know Liz Montgomery, as used to be at Research International, so I'd like to give a nod to her because she kindly set the wheels in motion for this even to be taking place. Now, the strapline of TGI and how it's positioned these days, and that seems to have nudged on a slide too soon, so let me try and arrange that, but it's labeled as the who, why and how of targeting. I'll go in to give you a bit of an overview as to what that really means. The very basics first, I suppose. TGI stands for Target Group Index. It was established in Britain over 40 years ago now, and it's available in something like 67 or 68 markets around the world these days. It is single-source consumer data. It touches on almost everything that impacts on a consumer's life. It's a robust sample of 25,000 adults aged 15 plus every year in Britain, and there are indeed also specialist versions such as a youth study that starts from the age of 7, and indeed a sort of more upmarket version which we call Premier. So in terms of what that means and what it measures, there's some basic building blocks within TGI. There's demographics, which on my screen certainly seems to have disappeared, but I don't know if you've got that. There's product and brand usage. There is all above and below the line media consumption, and indeed there's a vast battery of attitude statements covering a variety of areas. And it's that combination along with leisure that allows us to really, well, there's the demographics kindly appearing, allows us to really sort of, I suppose, take that strapline, the who, why, and the how, so we can tell you all about your target in terms of who they are, what they're thinking, and how you're going to communicate with them. How that typically looks, using bottled beer as an example, but it works fairly well across category, is we have a penetration question to see if you are in a particular category, and then a frequency of consumption, which allows us to quickly break that down into a sort of heavy, medium, or light user, and indeed a brand repertoire asked at sort of most often and others level of which brands you consume. To touch on the methodology, it's actually a tried and tested system that, as I say, has been around for so long, and it's still primarily done in the same way. The main recruitment vehicle is a face-to-face omnibus, which we conduct with a weekly sample of around 2,000. To give you an idea on the numbers, very roughly, if you imagine on an annual basis we're interviewing about 100,000 people every year. About half of those are sent the full TGI questionnaire, and of which half come back fully completed and checked and loaded into our software. So we've got around about a 50% response rate to give us our annual sample of around 25,000. You can probably imagine that a lot of the demographics are collected at this face-to-face stage, and indeed there's probably fair to say that there's a deal of rapport that's sort of established between the interviewee and the interviewer, which helps in terms of take-up of people wanting to actually take part in TGI. There is a small goodwill gesture, but it's anything from maybe a £5 gift voucher up to sort of £20 for some of the harder to reach segments of the population. But yes, the primarily it's face-to-face recruitment and then self-completion paper-based questionnaire. I think online now accounts for around about 20% of the sample, but it's still mostly done via that way. And of course, it's not a panel; it's continuously in field. Slowly moving on. Sorry about that. I've talked about this large annual sample size of about 25,000. 15, by the way, was the school leaving age when it started in '69. So that's why we have that as the starting of our all-adult sample. It's weighted to be nationally representative using census data. It's also weighted to press with NRS data. We do data updates every quarter in Britain. And I think I mentioned at the start that the historical model and the majority of clients access the data via a piece of desktop software. This is through the annual license that they buy TGI, but of course our brand owner unit has a strong bias to consultancy, and that's, I suppose, particularly strong in sectors like finance, telcos, and utilities. I must apologise that the area there it just keeps disappearing. There we go. So we've done a sort of equation without wishing to oversimplify things, but we think that our data added to your work, your expertise, can provide benefits in terms of delivery to your end client. That's why we're talking to you today. I mean, I think for you, as a member of the ICG, it should extend the utility of your work with robust data and complete your client offer. We're making this offer to you as a kind of exclusive thing for ICG members, so it should hopefully give you some competitive advantage over others. We can also offer obviously a single point of contact here at TGI, low level entry costs, and indeed sales commission, but I'll talk to you about that in a moment. In terms of your clients, it's going to give them the knowledge that they're dealing with neutral and respected data, and it should also provide a sort of bridge to some of their partner agencies and communications and media, because they obviously use the data day in, day out. So the offer, really, when Arthur and I talked about this, to dumb it right down, it's bring us business and you'll get a cut, but we also have that exclusive low-level access cost. So what we're talking about is making data, sort of basic overall profiling data in Excel available from as little as £500 as a starting point. Our minimum data fees would make a similar exercise for a client 6, 7, 8 times that, just to give you some sort of reference point for that. We'd also like to offer a revenue share, which we can again talk about at the end of this, or indeed on a one-to-one basis following the call. But we've certainly worked with a few independent consultants in the past, none actually, as far as I know, affiliated with ICG, but we've typically offered a 10% share of net revenue payable to us here in GB TGI. I should add, this is mainly on a British basis, because we don't actually own wholly all the data sources in some of the other countries, but I understand obviously most of the membership is based in GB and tend to be working perhaps on UK projects. So that shouldn't be necessarily a problem. If I can try and give you an example, the other thing, apart from the revenue share, is I suppose the point at the bottom on this finder's fee is if you happen to be working with a client and you thought, okay, well, there's maybe a need for TGI here, and there's no real added value that you can provide. If you introduced a sale to us, we would be happy to give you a share of that as some kind of finder's fee, which I've suggested 5%, but obviously if it was a particularly large amount, I'm sure we could be flexible on that too. Perhaps if I give an example quickly here, it might help just bring that to life a little. Segmentation is an area we work a lot in, and it's one where we've linked up with a few consultants in the past. So perhaps as an illustrative example, if a consultant is working on to produce a segmentation study for the client, and one of the requirements is to produce meaningful profiles of the segments that are actionable, which is quite often the key with TGI. The consultant could sort of appoint us, that is our statistician, our analyst, who use the data day in, day out, to run the segmentation and produce 10 portraits of resulting segments. Now, if we said our total quote for this work was, say, 25,000, for example, we would say the consultant would be entitled to 10% of that from us. And of course, I suppose, if appropriate, you could also add on any extra commission or hours work onto that when you invoice your client. The main benefit, I would say, for the member is that we will truly work as partners, and the consultant would have access, full access to work with us and our data for the project. The cashback incentive is, I would hope, a sort of a useful bonus rather than anything more than that. Let me just, I think we skipped on a little bit there, but let me just talk about that sort of entry-level spec as just a sort of delivery to you and your members. It's basically a formatted Excel sheet or two, which would look at a particular category and understand how that looks in terms of demographics, attitudes, and sort of category, purchase, brand behavior. And as I've said, from as little as £500, that would, I hope, add value to any projects you're doing, but it would also, you can be assured that would cost a lot more to a client if they were coming to us to commission it, and indeed to non-ICG members for that matter. I've tried to just show you that. It's not the easiest thing to make look attractive, but we felt it's probably important to demonstrate what that would potentially look like. The point being is that you can take a particular target and understand in great detail how that breaks down. So, you know, the example here looks at some demographics, and you can, you know, we've got a whole host of detailed demographic breakdowns there, but you can imagine if you're looking at a particular market, you can quickly get an overview of who the people are in that market. I've got another slide just to take that a step further, and just quickly talk you through some of the numbers. So you can see here that we have the sample, so the total number of respondents. We also have, of course, how that's represented nationally. So the weighted figure is that second column with the 3 zeros in it, effectively saying that you know, that social grade A figure of 373 sample is weighted up to just over 1 million people in the population. We have the proportion of your target who fall into a particular measure. So in this instance, you could say 17% of target 1 are in the top SEL, socioeconomic level band. So that's your 17% in column. And of course, you sort of have the converse, the proportion of the measure who are in your target. So 28% of full-time homemakers are in your first target. And in the sort of highlighted cells, because obviously it's important to take a combination of the penetration and the sort of index, you can see whether you're over or under indexing on a particular measure. We thought we'd try and give a couple of examples just to sort of wrap up as to how this has worked in the past. I've already mentioned segmentation, so I won't spend too much time on this, but this is an example of where a consultant working with a fast food retailer has approached us. The client had very ambitious growth plans to double the amount of new store openings, but there didn't seem to be a very clear customer focus and evidence of the end target in mind. Effectively, they approached us, and then we used what we have within TGI to do a segmentation. So we first of all refined the market they were in, called the food on the go market, using variables within TGI. And then, taking the respondent level data, our statisticians went to work doing factor and cluster to deliver bespoke segmentation. Ultimately, this led to a better understanding of customers and competitors in the marketplace, and of course, because we have that regional level of detail in TGI, the SKUs from TGI fed directly into new store opening plans. And yes, I've mentioned segmentation. It probably is, you know, 90% of our business, so it's a key area where we tend to add value, whether it's using TGI in that bespoke way or indeed just linking an existing thing to TGI. Another area we've worked quite a bit with, particularly in FMCG, is sort of very early stage NPD pipeline. I would say it's this phrase, "You've got the size of the prize." It's using TGI data to size and profile targets quickly and get to what a number of our clients have used as this phrase, "size of the price." But I suppose the basis of it is trying to root out good and bad ideas as early as possible in that NPD pipeline, and we do this usually on an interactive sort of workshop basis. The example we've given here is actually a shampoo manufacturer, and I think I've got a bit more detail on that in the next slide. Well, actually, to be fair, that's more of I suppose that's more of the general approach actually, rather than a specific example. But it's when a client can say, "Look, we're thinking of launching multiple new products. We've got a whole host of ideas." They can describe that they might be busy mums who snack. For instance, I remember we did that with one of our confectionery clients. So we can obviously have variables, both demographics and category use and attitudinal, which can help sort of really at one end of the scale say if this is a particularly large and viable target, or if you narrow it down too much, is there only, I don't know, 300,000 people who actually apply and fit in that category. And often where we have a bit of spend measure on the category, we can help really take it a step further and say, well, is that actually a valuable market or segment of the market to be going at? So it's all just about using the variables we have in TGI, our expertise of running the data and working out if something is going to be viable or not. And of course, using TGI helps because it's a language that they and their partner agencies speak.